Welcome, friends, to this new series of containers and Kubernetes. So, in this particular series, we are discussing from the basic fundamental stuffs of containers and going deep into various things of containers and Kubernetes. So, in the last lecture, we discussed about network, how the network can isolate different containers and it can help to communicate between the containers. If you have missed that video, you can find the video link in the description below. We are recommending you to watch the video before you can jump into this lecture. So let's get started. So in the last lecture, we created the network mynet to this command, docker network create mynet. And we found that this particular network was created as type of bridge because that was a default type of driver that can be applied when you create the network without specifying its type. Now, if you want to create the network of the type host, then you have to specify the driver type. So over here, we can specify that Docker network create and -d for drive. And maybe we can specify the host is the type of the network that you need to create. And then we need to specify a name. So this particular command will create my host network, which is a type of host. Now, it is saying that the only one instance of host network is allowed because this particular type of network is binding the host, actual host machine to the network in the container. And we already have the network, host type of network named as host is already present. So how you can create another type of host network in the same machine because it's already tied up with the network inside there. So we can create only one host type of network in our system, but we can have multiple bridge network inside our one host machine. So now we have created the mynet bridge network. And now let's try to check its details. So for example, I want to inspect the network mynet and want to see the details of that network. So I will say Docker network inspect mynet, and it will provide me the details of this particular network. For example, you can see that this is a bridge kind of network, and it is the default driver. Name of this network is mynet, and it is having some ID attached with it. Now, it is an external network. It is not an internal network. Somebody can reach to this particular network from outside. Also, you can see that automatically Docker engine created one subnet CIDR range for this particular network. Now, if you don't know about the CIDR range, then you can watch the video that provided the details of CIDR range. We are going to give the link of the video in the description so that you can have some idea about the CIDR range. So basically, this particular range of IP addresses is starting from 172.24, and then rest of these two address space can be changed. For example, these 2 bytes will be fixed, but the next 2 bytes will be variable for /16 kind of CID range. Now, the interesting fact is that how we can specify our own subnetwork. Because if we are going to build the networks, we can customize our subnetwork and we can segregate different networks accordingly. So we are having the bridge network and having the flexibility to declare the same. So for example, now let's drop this particular network. So the command is docker network rm, and then my net will basically drop this network. Now, I want to create the same network, but now I need to specify, maybe I can specify the drive as bridge, as usual. And then I am going to provide my customized CIDR range 10.0.0.0/24 is my network that I'm going to create. And if I do so, let me inspect this particular network, my net, it's my host. And we can see that the subnet is basically created as per the input that we have provided. So if we create one container inside this particular network, one of the address from this particular address space will be assigned to that container. Now let's create one container inside this particular subnet, and the command is docker run -d -name some nginx, and maybe we can say sub, and then we need to specify the network, which is my host, and then nginx. If we do so, this particular container actually created under this network sub nginx sub. So we can inspect this container and we can see this particular container is having this network, which is actually having this IP address 10.0.0.2, which is in the address space 10.0.0.0/24. So any container that is going to be created inside this particular network will be assigned accordingly, whatever the subnetwork range we have provided during creation of this particular network. Now let's drop these containers. So let us see like what are the running containers right now. So we can remove the container that is running. That command is docker rm -f some nginx sub. That will remove the running container, and also we are going to remove some nginx 1 and some nginx 2. It's kind of a cleanup that we are going to do. So just want to make sure that there is no nginx is running. Also, we are going to remove this MySQL server container as well. Okay, now let's see the network that we have. So this my host is basically a breach type of network that we have created, and we assign the sub network. Now, this is not an internal network, so anyone in the external world can access to this network. Whatever the containers will be created inside this particular network will be accessed by the external world. So now let's create the same Nginx, but this time we're going to map the ports 8080 to containers 80, and let us run. And let's go to this browser and let us grab this IP address, and we can check whether it is accessible from outside world or not. Now we can see this is completely accessible, though it is a separate network inside the separate network some Nginx sub, because this particular network is not an internal network, it is actually accessible from there. Now, if we create another network create, and maybe we can provide some subnet that is 10.2.0.0/16, and maybe we can say minus internal, and we can specify one name that is private net, that will create the network, private network. And now this particular network, if some container is created inside this particular network, it will be completely hidden from the outside world. So let's do one thing. Let's inspect this particular network, Docker network inspect private net, and we can see that the range, whatever we have declared, that is completely used by this network as our configuration provided. Also, you can see this time the internal is true. That is, this particular network is completely hidden from the outside world. Now, if we create the same Nginx network, Nginx container, and if we specify the port is 8081, and instead of my host, if we specify this particular network that is private net, and maybe we can name it as private net Nginx, then this particular container is completely hidden from the outside world. So if I say 8081, I cannot reach. It will actually not reachable from the outside world. So this is how we can create a private network through this Docker networking. So in the upcoming lecture, we will see how we can create a private network for the database server, how the Nginx app engine can communicate with the MySQL server, but this particular MySQL server is not accessible from outside, so that we can completely create a secured MySQL server private database, and we cannot expose it to outside world. So in the upcoming lecture, we will see how we can do that. So thanks for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed the video a lot. In the upcoming lecture, we will see how we can create a very secure private database server, and that is only accessible by the web server, but the external world will not see or access the database inside the containers. So let's stay tuned and we will see you in the next lecture. Till then, bye and stay safe. Thank you.